Our guest speaker today is the president of two privately owned exploration companies, Uminco Nickel Mining Corporation and Uminco Pacific Mining Corporation. Our speaker was not always in nickel mining. From 1994 to 2003, our speaker was chairman and chief executive officer of Philex Mining Corporation. All of you know that is a very successful gold copper miner that is also listed with our Philippine Stock Exchange. Our speaker also served as president of the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines from 1993 to 1995, and then as its chairman from 1995 to 2003. Under the leadership of our speaker, Nickel Asia is focused on growth and takes very seriously its responsibilities towards safety, environmental protection, community relations, and community development. For its endeavors in these fields, Nickel Asia has received numerous awards. Nickel Asia believes that sustainable development is the only way forward for any mining corporation. And it exerts significant efforts to operate under all of these principles. Nickel Asia is committed to responsible mining and runs every facet of its operations under world-class standards. Our speaker's topic is a burning one, and I'm sure it is what has drawn a record-breaking audience of 250 attendees here today. His topic is the Philippine mining industry's rebuttal to the Save the Palawan movement. Ladies and gentlemen, the past president and CEO of Philex Mining, the past chairman of the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines, and the current president and CEO of Nickel Asia, the largest nickel mining company in the Philippines today, Gerard H. Brimo.
Thank you very much, Leo. First of all, I'd like to extend my appreciation to the Philippine Mining Luncheon for plugging the Nickel Asia shares. In case you don't know, the symbol is NIKL. Thank you for having me here. I think you've all heard about the Save Palawan movement. This was born some months ago, headed by a lady that has very good connections of her own, and their goal is to raise 10 million signatures to stop mining in Palawan. They've developed a presentation that is not only harmful to those of us that are mining in Palawan, but is also harmful to the industry as a whole. And they've been showing this around town to a number of media forums, to whoever groups will listen to them. They've also showed it to a number of government people. And the presentation is all wrong, but nevertheless, for those that do not know mining, if you were to sit down and view the presentation, you will get alarmed or maybe mortified, totally appalled perhaps. I think you get my drift. It's an immensely damaging presentation. So what we've had to do is we've had to present our counter to what they're showing. And we as well have presented this in a number of forums and other, to editorial boards of the major newspapers, as well as to some government people. And this is what I will be showing you this afternoon. If you have not had the privilege of sitting and viewing their presentation, you will get a glimpse of it in what I will be showing you. So there are three parts to this presentation. The first one is the issues that have been alleged against us and how we rebut the issues. The second part is an example of large-scale metallic mining in Palawan, which is the example of Rio Tuba nickel, the largest and oldest lateritic nickel mine in Palawan under Nickel Asia. And the third part, at the request of Kevin, we've put a slide that talks about the more burning issues surrounding the mining industry today, and Artisini of the Chamber of Mines will discuss that. So we'll start, and I will go quickly because this is a bit long. We will look at initially at the issues. Let me just change this a bit. And on the top of the list is the issue that created all this, and that is the assassination of Gerry Ortega. I don't know if you know about this. Gerry Ortega is a well-known personality in Palawan. He is a broadcaster. He's an environmentalist. He is anti-mining, but he also advocated very strongly against other issues, principally corruption and the misuse of the Shell Malampaya royalties. When he was assassinated, the lady that heads this organization alluded to links between the industry and this crime, if you can believe that. And the allegations were so strong that the Chamber of Mines felt obliged to come out with a one-page ad in the newspapers to deny any links to this. Eventually, the wife of Gerry Ortega filed criminal charges against the former Palawan governor. And so very clearly the issue that led to this assassination has to do with corruption. And since then, the Safe Palawan movement does not mention this anymore. But they've started out with a big mistake against the industry. Other issues: mining is affecting the biodiversity of Palawan. All of Palawan is pristine and biodiverse and should not be touched. It's destroying forests, displacing agriculture, and so forth. There is a large amount of mining applications in Palawan and the issue of unrehabilitated mines of the past. So I'll look at these issues briefly and show you how we address these. Palawan and the environment. Palawan is actually a very special province. It is the only province that has an environmental law all unto itself, and that is Republic Act 7611, the Strategic Environmental Plan for Palawan. The Palawan Council for Sustainable Development that is tasked to implement that law, and of course the 1995 Mining Act. And under the SEP law, it specifies a graded system of protection and development control known as the Environmentally Critical Areas Network, or ECAN, and it specifies that no form of human disruption above 1,000 meter elevation, that's what they call the core zone, first growth, forests, peaks, and other areas should not be touched. And of course, as we all know, in the Mining Act itself, Section 19 excludes entire areas for mining. That's old growth or virgin forests, watersheds, built-up areas, reservations. Any area that falls under the National Integrated Protected Area System, or NIPAS, is close to mining. So you have all these protective measures, and so what is the fuzz all about? So now let's see what the Palawan Council for Sustainable Development have to say. And mind you, this is a government agency that is tasked to implement the SEP law. They have been stung as well by the criticisms that were hurled against them for approving so many mining applications and allowing the forest to be destroyed, that they as well felt obliged to come out with a one-page ad in the newspapers. And they call it the real score. Palawan's forest remains the country's largest. This is what it looks like. And I will just quote one aspect of this ad. NGO sectors and some sectors of civil society blame mining as the main culprit for Palawan's deforestation. But this allegation is grossly inaccurate and lacking in well-established data support. For instance, PCSD scientific findings directly relate actual loss of the standing trees in Palawan, not primarily due to mining, but to continuing harvest of timber for domestic consumption, forest land use conversion for agricultural development, and continuous establishment of human settlements. In actual fact, the PCSD has granted strategic environmental plan clearance on 18,000 hectares in round numbers, of which only 1,557 hectares has been approved for mining, the balance for exploration. And we have to keep in mind that Palawan is actually the largest province in the country in terms of land mass. It has 1.46 million hectares. So what has been approved for mining is a minuscule part of the province. And to prove PCSD's point, these are two slides that were taken from the Safe Palawan movement, and they show this in their presentation. This is in the center of the island. The first one on the left was taken in 1978, and what they want you to see here is the very large green area that extends from the west to the east of the province. Although a lot of that has been logged out years ago. Nevertheless, it looks green on this picture. And then on the right is the same picture, but taken in 2007. And you'll see the encroachment into the central part, the green area. But the question that must be asked is, where is mining here? Has mining actually caused this? And the answer is no. There's only 2 large-scale mines that are here, and I cannot point, or can I? Oh, no, sorry. Can I point? Okay. Berong nickel is somewhere here. It's inside the green area, but it is so small that you can hardly notice it. And the only one is this part here that is now called City Nickel, which is actually started as a small-scale mining operation, not large-scale. It's large-scale today, but it actually started at small scale. So the enroachment that you see here and all throughout is not due to mining, and it's precisely what the PCSD says. It's the pressure on the need for more land because of the increasing population. In actual fact, one cannot say that Palawan is all biodiverse. And what we show here is the vegetation in Rio Tuba on the left in the 1970s. This is the mining area. And typical of areas with lateritic soil, it's mostly shrubs, stunted trees. Some of the hardwood beside the deposit was logged out years before the mining company went there. And on the right is the vegetation in Berong nickel. This is considered tertiary grown because whatever primary forest was there many years ago was logged out. Secondary growth was burnt. There was a pretty large fire. This is all documented, by the way. And so what you see is tertiary growth. And again, because of the lateritic nature of the soil, these are all stunted trees. Certainly not a biodiverse area. So who is mining in Palawan anyway that is causing all this fuss? Well, there's only 3 large-scale metallic mines in Palawan. That's all there is. And mining lateritic nickel. There is Rio Tuba on the south, and there's also the Coral Bay processing plant beside Rio Tuba, the country's first HPAL plant. City Nickel further on the center of the island, and Berong on the west side. That's all there is. So what these groups don't do is they don't distinguish between the heavily regulated large-scale sector and the largely unregulated small-scale sector, as well as illegal mining that takes place all around the country, probably in some parts of Palawan too. There's no effort by them to distinguish one against the other. And to make that point, if you listen to their presentation, they show slide after slide of Sibuyan Island. Sibuyan Island is beside Romblon, admittedly a very beautiful island. And they show this. On the left-hand side is what they call a tailings pond that is full of mercury. And on the right-hand side is an example of gold mining. These are examples of illegal mining that should not be taking place in Sibuyan or Palawan or anywhere else in this country. But it does. It does take place. It's a social and environmental problem, but it is largely irrelevant to the issue of mining in Palawan. And yet they show slide after slide of this. Palawan and mining applications. Well, if there's one thing that they're correct, there are a lot of mining applications in Palawan, but even this has been badly misinterpreted. And what they show in their presentation is this slide here, the claims map, and they color-code it to make it more apparent. But where they have, and then of course they say that, well, look, I mean, the whole of Palawan is going to get mined out if we don't do something about this. But this has been badly misinterpreted because these are claims in the application stage. Many of them have languished in such stage over many years, and many of them will not be approved. And they won't be approved because quite a few of them are in protected areas or in built-up areas or on the top of the mountain peaks and so forth, or in areas close to mining. So then you might ask, well, if that's the case, why is there a map that shows all these applications? And the answer to that is that if you go and file a claim, what the MGB will do is, if nobody has filed before you, they will plot your claim on a map. Whether or not that claim is in top of a city or on top of a mountain, it just gets plotted. It's the way they control applications. It doesn't mean that that claim is going to be approved. And so this claims map has been badly misinterpreted. And because of this, the MGB and the PCSD are now cleaning up this map, and I've seen one version of it, and it will look very different. Here is an example. Well, let me just point out that on the center of the island is a very large protected area called Mount Mantalingahan, and there are all these claims on top of it. And for that reason, in their presentation, they show slide after slide of Mount Mantalingahan, admittedly a primary forest in large part, and very beautiful at that. And of course, they're raising the fear that mining is going to take away all these trees. Well, the fact is that Mount Mantalingahan is actually a protected area. It's a protected area under the National Integrated Protected Area System, or NIPAS, and mining cannot take place in that protected area. Not unless you have prior rights. But even if you have prior rights, if it's a primary forest, you can't mine anyway. So slide after slide showing this, raising the fear of mining, destroying a beautiful primary forest in Palawan, when in fact this is a protected area. Mining and agriculture, the issue of food security. Why are we allowing mining? Why don't we give preference to agriculture? The only thing to say here is that mining has never competed against agriculture. I mean, you can't do intensive agriculture in mineralized areas, as we all know. And if they talk about agriculture, why don't they talk about slash and burn farming, which is particularly harmful and which occurs in Palawan and all over the country? You see this picture here is behind the Berong nickel permitted area. Every one of these circles shows scars that have occurred as a result of what is called slash and burn farming. And you'll see the insert of one of those areas on the lower right-hand side. And you can imagine the kind of siltation that will occur here when the rains come. So if there is a mining company beside this, you can of course imagine that the mining company will be blamed for the significant siltation that will occur as a result of this. No mention about this in their presentation, of course. Mining and Palawan fishing. I don't know if any of you have caught this ad. This actually came out in the newspapers. It's called Pritong Nickel, which means fried nickel too. It's an outline of a fish with coins. I can only assume it's nickel coins. And it says here 50% of Metro Manila's and 30% of the country's total seafood catch comes from Palawan. Mining is putting all of that at risk. Say no to mining. Imagine that this has come out in an ad in a newspaper. It's as ridiculous as it is wrong. I mean, we do have such a thing as the Fisheries Code in the Philippines, and the Fisheries Code formulates or defines municipal waters as an area from the coast to 10 to 15 kilometers away from the coast. And that is reserved for municipal fishing, and municipal fishing is largely in turn reserved for the fisher folk living in the fishing villages near the coast, using their small bancas to do fishing. And that catch is really meant for domestic consumption. The kind of fish catch that makes its way to Manila and Cebu and other large parts of the country is commercial fishing, and that takes place quite far from the coastline of Palawan. And anyway, where is the nickel laterite that's going into the sea? Well, there is none, because if there is, you would certainly hear about it. So total misinformation on this one, as in others. Nickel, and we were obliged to come out with this slide because there was a move to say that nickel is carcinogenic and you shouldn't go near nickel ore and we shouldn't be mining it. And we showed this slide early on, so they stopped talking about it. I didn't know this, but the nickel is actually used in cardiovascular stents. It's actually made of a nickel titanium alloy called nitinol. See, I've learned something because of this. And of course, stainless steel pots and pans and cutleries and surgical instruments, implants, and so on and so forth. Unrehabilitated mines of the past, if you were to have had the privilege of listening to them, you would have had to sit through 7 slides showing 7 examples of closed down mines in our country that have not been rehabilitated. I only show 3 of them here on top. And of course, we all know that these examples exist in this country as they do all over the world, and they've taken place at a time, and this goes back 30 or 40 years ago, at a time when we were not environmentally conscious. There was a time here in this country and in other mining countries where you could throw your tailings down the river stream and nobody would care. That, of course, has all changed. And since the 1995 Mining Act was enacted, we all have to submit a mine decommissioning plan. And we also have to set aside funds yearly under what is called the Mine Rehabilitation Fund for eventual mine rehabilitation. So what they're talking about is something that existed many years ago and belongs to a different era. And similarly, they will also show Mark Copper. I think this is an incident that we will never get rid of. You're all familiar with what happened here in the island of Marinduque. And the short of it is that this is history. It has not happened again. And it is also not relevant to Palawan, because this is not the kind of mining we do in Palawan. Yet they show this. I'm glad you finished your lunch. I was afraid to ruin your lunch. They also show this in some presentations. And they also show, if they don't show this, they'll show another slide of somebody without a leg. What this says here is boils and scars due to acid mine drainage and heavy metals poisoning in Siocon, Zamboanga del Norte. There's only one large-scale mine in Siocon, and that's TVI. So we had TVI comment on this, and I've actually seen this slide before, by the way. I've been in this industry for a long time, and these pictures get recycled every now and then. So we asked TVI to comment on this, and TVI in 2004 started mining a gold and silver oxide mine. It was an oxide cap from 2004 to 2008. And as we all know, oxide deposits do not result in acid mine drainage. There is a sulfide mine, the copper and zinc mine that they are now mining below the oxide zone, started in 2009, and of course that's all contained in their tailings dam. So I don't know where this comes from, but we can conclude that this is yet another very dangerous piece of misinformation. So those are the issues, and those are the rebuttals. And then what we do in our presentation is we then move to an example of lateritic nickel mining in Palawan. This is Rio Tuba, the largest and oldest lateritic nickel mine. Mine development started in 1975, and the first ore was sold in 1977. And again, pictures of what the area looked like way back in the mid-1970s. Again, not biodiverse or pristine. There's no primary forest here. The laterite goes all the way to the surface, so you're looking at shrubs and stunted trees for the most part. Very poor and undeveloped area. There was no road from Puerto to this part of the island. And then you'll see on the left-hand side the start of our township in 1978, typical of what happens with large-scale mining that takes place in far-flung areas. If you want to attract labor, you have to build your own town site. And on the right, that's what it looks like today. A couple of pictures on what Rio Tuba looks like today. This is a barangay, by the way. And the municipality of Batarasa is a first-class municipality. And out of 23 municipalities in Palawan, they are number 4 in terms of total assets and number 2 in terms of total equity and net income. And the only real business that is there is the mine and the adjacent nickel processing plant. On a combined basis, the mine, Rio Tuba Mine, Coral Bay, the processing plant, and RTN Foundation, and I will explain what this does, including employees from our contractors, we employ about 4,200 individuals. So if you multiply this by a multiplier effect of 5 and assume an average family size in our country of 5, that's over 100,000 Filipinos that benefit from the operations, the combined operations in Rio Tuba. Total exports going back 1977 when the nickel price was probably 20 cents or 50 cents, all the way up to 2010, $500 million. And in 2010 alone, the mine paid a total of 854 million pesos in taxes, which is quite substantial. And then what we do is we explain what lateritic nickel ore is all about, because they have no idea what it is. And we show this profile of a lateritic nickel deposit. This is in Indonesia, but it's no different than in the Philippines. And we have to explain that these are laterites are soil types, rich in iron and aluminum or nickel. They're formed in tropical countries, and they are normally rusty red due to iron oxides. And one can imagine that it's very hard to grow anything meaningful with this kind of soil. And we also explained that these are shallow deposits. They don't go down more than 20 meters. We're not talking about large open pits, and we don't use explosives to mine this. We also point out that this activity is carried out throughout the world. It's not only in the Philippines, and all these yellow boxes that you see in the tropical belt and all the way down to Australia as well are represent lateritic nickel mines. And the red are the sulfide nickel mines that you find in the Western world. And then we show pictures of the mining area of Rio Tuba, and this is where the anti-mining people get mortified that the vegetation has been stripped, and you're looking at all these ugly-looking rocks there, and so on and so forth, and that's what they criticize. The question is, what do we do next, and how do we rehabilitate this? And so this is what we show. This is in the center of the picture is a 9-hectare mined-out area, and this on the top left hand of the picture is an area that has been rehabilitated, and the area in the middle is in the process of getting rehabilitated. And it's pretty straightforward. What we do is we backfill, we recontour a little bit, and we lay topsoil in preparation for planting, because without that you're not going to grow anything here. And the native species are grown in our nursery, and the Rio Tuba nursery has the capacity to grow 90,000 seedlings a year. And on this slide, this is the same area, but looking at a different angle. And you'll now see the rows of small trees, seedlings that have been planted. And you'll see a number of individuals doing the planting. This is actually a livelihood program. And in the back of the picture, and it's blown up on top, is a mined out area. It looks terrible, but this area is scheduled for rehabilitation. And the mound that you see behind it is topsoil that is going to be used to rehabilitate the mined out area. So going to this, the picture on top is the same picture that I showed you. The part on the left is the former rehabilitated mine area. In the middle, you'll see that the growth is more apparent, and this is in May 2008. September 2009 and March of 2011, we have a mini forest here already. We actually use a doctorate in forestry from University of the Philippines to manage this program. It's not actually that easy. And the planting is done in 2 sequences. They first plant the primary species, fast-growing trees that in 3 years can provide a canopy, so that you go into the next sequence of planting, which is the native hardwood trees, and they have a better chances of surviving because they're not being hit by the sunlight. They're protected by the canopy from the first growth. There's a bit of a science to this, let's put it that way. We came out with a 1-page ad on this, and the comment that we got from the lady that's managing this movement is that, well, they've been mining for 30 years, so why are they only rehabilitating in 2008? But that is not true. We have, you can never win in this game, you know. We have started rehabilitating since the 1980s. We have rehabilitated 238 hectares. We've planted over 500,000 trees doing this. And outside of the mining areas, we've also planted over 300,000 trees. Our environmental expenses in 2010 was 44 million pesos. This is what it looks like inside. We also keep track of the fauna and that comes back to this area, and there's quite a few of them, and those are all documented. They also show this slide. They call this a mined-out area of Rio Tuba, taken in 1996 to early 1998. I don't know how they got this picture. We had this investigated, and in fact, this area has been rehabilitated already, and that's the picture below. But they still show that picture in their presentations. The only thing that we really have to pay attention to in lateritic nickel mining is siltation. So we take care of that by a series of retention ponds in strategic parts of the deposit. You all know about this. And also dust. In order to control the dust, we use a lot of water spraying, windbreakers, and the like. We'll now go very briefly. I'm winding down now. I know this is a bit long. We're now going through to the social development projects. And as you know, mining companies here are obliged to spend 1% of our direct mining and milling costs if any, towards social development management projects. And that has now been raised to 1.5% of total operating costs. So that amount is going to go quite high. And what we do in Rio Tuba is we commingle the obligations of Rio Tuba and Coral Bay into a foundation, the RTN Foundation, so that the expenditures and the type of programs that we spend on are done in a coordinated manner throughout the impact area. Let me just go through these figures here because they are interesting. For Rio Tuba, the commitment for 2010 is 39.2 million pesos, and that's composed of the 1% of 5.2 million, and it's also composed of a 1% royalty to the IPs. We have indigenous peoples in the area, which is 34 million. They don't have an ancestral land or ancestral domain title, but there's 13,000 of them, and early on, we recognized our obligation to them, and so the 1% is paid to them. So the obligation of Rio Tuba, if you combine both, is 39 million for 2010. The company actually spent 62 million pesos. And Coral Bay, the 1% of their costs is 68 million, and they've actually spent 104.6 million. So on a combined basis, the two companies spent 166 million pesos for social development work in the municipality of Batarasa, if you include the 1% that goes to the IPs. This is the impact area. It's quite large. It's composed of 11 barangays and 24 indigenous cultural communities. There are 13,000 indigenous persons within the impact area. So very briefly, we'll look at the programs that we've instituted, some of them some years ago. A hospital that's being funded by the RTN Foundation. It's considered a primary hospital. 38 staff. Over 40,000 patients in 2010. About 2,900 were inpatients. 65% of them are non-dependents. And the hospital is given for free to employees and dependents of both companies, to the indigenous peoples in the area, and is given at cost to everybody else. In 2010, it cost the two companies, this is shared between Rio Tuba and Coral Bay, it cost 60.5 million to operate, and 39.4 million of that is credited against our SDMP, against our obligation for social expenditures. Schools, we have a kindergarten, elementary, and high school under the supervision of the De La Salle University in Bacolod City, 52 staff, 1,300 enrollees, 63% of them are non-dependents, and this is virtually given to them for free. It's cost 27 million in 2010, and 17 million of that is credited against our social obligation. Housing for the indigenous peoples. In coordination with the Gawad Kalinga Foundation, they have a very nice program where they require sweat equity. So if you want one of these houses, you have to spend 1,000 hours of sweat helping to construct the house, which is the best way of getting them to take ownership. And we have built 208 units so far in 6 different sites. You'll see one of the sites below on the left-hand side of the picture. In 2010, it's 13 million pesos. And the reason why we did this is because if you look at this slide on the top left is the kind of housing that the indigenous peoples were living in, and we gave them the option to move into the Gawad Kalinga housing. And this is purely voluntary. They don't have to accept this, but every one of them has accepted this housing program. That actually wasn't meant as a joke. Sometimes these people will say that you're forcing the IPs to move. We're not forcing them to move anywhere. They can say no to. They can stay where they are if they want to. Honestly. Indigenous learning system. We set this up in conjunction with the St. Jude school, Catholic school, adjacent to Malacanang. 3 levels, levels 1 to 3. Working staff of 14, 667 IPs are enrolled here, and they're not only kids, they're also adults. And we spent 10.3 million pesos for this in 2010. So I'm going to pause here for a while. Consider what we do for the indigenous peoples in our area. They get free housing if they want to. They get free medical care. They get free education. They get livelihood. They get employment. Some of them are employed. They're also beneficiaries of our SDMP, so they get other things too. And yet, when the Safe Palawan movement does their presentation, if you've had a chance to see it, you will see 2 IP ladies from our area talking against the company and talking against mining in general. We oppose mining. Well, we know these ladies, and before I tell you why we know them, this lady herself is a beneficiary of our programs. 3 of her children were scholars. She has received seeds and fertilizer and cash for her cornfield. She actually has a cornfield, and some livestock as well. She herself is enrolled in the Indigenous learning system, not her kids, but she, because she's illiterate. She receives medical care for the whole family. But she is also used by ELAC and PNNI, the 2 very well-known anti-mining groups in Palawan, for their anti-mining advocacies. So sometimes you get people like this that take from one hand and take from both hands, actually. She's actually quite a smart lady. So I assume that she's getting something from the other side too, right? So the question is, does she represent the entire 13,000 indigenous peoples within our area? I hardly think so. Another lady, the 2 of them actually come out in their presentation. Same thing, they benefit tremendously from the programs of the company, but they also participate in anti-mining activities in Palawan. They do not represent the 13,000 indigenous persons that benefit from our operations. SDMP funds go to infrastructure. Last 3 or 4 slides, folks. Schools, with daycare centers, roads and bridges. Livelihood projects with emphasis on agriculture and fishing. 3 bancas were given a whole bunch of hand tractors and what have you. Social services, ambulances, fire trucks. Water systems, a big effort in water systems in the municipality. Educational assistance, even though we have our own schools, we still have scholars. We have 200 high school and over 200 college scholars. These are the college scholars that you will see here, and it's part of our SDMP commitment. Last 2 slides from me. This is one slide that is shown in their presentation. I think the top part represents us. At least we're given credit for generating jobs and scholarships and daycare centers and revenues. And what's below probably doesn't represent us. I'm not sure in what context this is said. But of course, the message here is that it is not one against the other. I mean, surely a balanced form of development is the way to go. And in some presentations, they end with this, which is outrageous, to say the least. On the left is an example of phosphate mining in Nauru, and we don't do that kind of mining here. And on the right is the same picture of this mined-out area of Rio Tuba, which today has been fully rehabilitated. So that completes my presentation. I thank you for your kind attention. I'm sorry if I've ruined your lunch. I would like to call now on Art Decini to discuss, this is at the request of Kevin, to discuss some of the burning issues of the industry today. Thank you.
Okay, since everybody's been introduced already and acknowledged, I'll just go straight to the issues that are affecting the mining industry today. There are going to be 7 issues. 5 of them are a result of the anti-mining movements or pushing to get a policy affected on mining. As you well know, the anti-mining groups has issues regarding the environment, such as the destruction of the watersheds by mining operations, pollution of agricultural lands, and for the indigenous people, they claim that there's a displacement of indigenous people in ancestral domain areas and militarization of mining in ancestral areas. However, while they were trying to get this targeted in the SONA for the president, it has not appeared, and the president has not issued any EO to ban large-scale mining despite the many issues brought out by these anti-mining groups. Likewise, there's still a big support on mining. NEDA has included mining among the 5 growth industries in the medium-term development plan. So we're in there. And then, of course, the IPP priority list by the BOI, mining has always been part of this IPP list every year. So I believe that we have contained more or less the anti-mining issues. However, I have in here, which is not officially, should not be officially disclosed, but in time it will be given to all mining companies who are interested to get a copy of it. It's a very good report done by a research group, which shows the different moves, concerted moves, and not just one or two. It's a concerted move of the anti-mining groups, and they are all identified. But I don't want to be in the headlines tomorrow, so I will not take that up today. Issue number 2 is the ban on open pit mining. The issue here is whether the national laws prevail over local environmental code. There are 5 provinces who have a moratorium on ban on open pit mining. We have Capiz, Romblon, Samar, Mindoro, South Cotabato, and Marinduque, and 2 cities, Puerto Princesa and Batangas City. Since we have many members of the chamber with varying interests, and we have, of course, different options then to satisfy each one. The DILG secretary is open engaging both the LIGU, local government unit, and the South Cotabato project of Extrata. Others want a filing of a test case in the Supreme Court. That is being considered. And there has been some progress, according to Secretary Purisima, when the SMI submitted its EIA to the provincial government. He's saying that there should be some resolution to this before the end of the year. Writ of Kalikasan, number 3. This writ of Kalikasan can be filed by anyone only if environment impacts affect 2 or more provinces. The TEPOs, or the Temporary Environmental Protection Order, have been filed against mining companies in Surigao, Philex Silangan Project, Manila Mining Kalayaan Project, Nickel Asia Taganitos Project, and Mac Ventures. We were informed that the resolution to the Silangan project will be lifted, or the TEPO will be lifted before the end of the year. Item number 4 is the Alternative Mining Bill. Several bills have been filed by the anti-mining groups and party list members. Mining resources found within, these are those different improvements, they say, regarding the mining bill. Now they say that mineral resources found within ancestral domains, areas belong to the IPs. All areas are closed to mining unless declared open by the council composed of MGB, DNR, LGUs, IPs, and NGOs. Government shall receive 10% of gross revenues besides the excise tax of 2%. Removal of the FTAA. A position paper by the chamber has been filed in Congress. We do not believe, though, that with all our contacts within the Congress, that this will materialize. There's another bill that is of concern, is the Land Use Bill. It only aims at limiting mineral areas and also placed mineral resource development at the back burner of the country's development. Mineral development is not a priority sector under the bill, and priority is in declaring more protected areas and forest reservations to be closed to mining. The principal author of the bill resigned the other day. I don't know whether it's a good move or not. Increased taxation. Economic managers of the administration have been saying that the government has not been receiving its fair share in mining. And therefore, the DNR drafted an executive order where mining areas will be declared as mineral reservations, and with it a 5% royalty. The Office of the President referred back to the DNR the position paper of the chamber on this matter. So we will be discussing with the DNR the conversions of mining areas to reservations, which I think will take a long time, or if at all. Number 7, use it or lose it policy, which was implemented October 2010 up to June 2011. The objective of this is to cleanse the pending 2,200 mining applications in the MGB, which covers 5 million hectares which has not moved for an average of 10 years. So this is a good objective, and it will satisfy serious mining investors who can no longer find open areas because of the many speculative mining applications that have blanketed the potential areas. With 97% acted upon already on these applications, it has resulted in a denial of 1,600 applications and 350 endorsed for approval. 24% of the denied claims are covered by motions for reconsideration. The Chamber will be submitting a position paper as problems in implementation have cropped up. It will be discussed with the DNR and MGB. One other item which has always been hurled against the mining is the lack of numbers, you say. We do not have the employment figures that will really swing the administration or anybody to be convinced that mining should be entertained in this country. However, further our research show that the employment and number of people dependent on mining, metallic and non-metallic, sand and gravel, quarries, cement, and coal. We have 340,000 employees directly employed, and with a multiplier of 5, that's 1.7 direct and indirect employees. And assuming a 5 per family, we're talking about 8.5 million Filipinos dependent on mining. With the new projects in the next 5 to 6 years, another 2 million will be added to the 8.5 million, having 10.5 million Filipinos dependent on mining. So that's a summary of the issues that has been being discussed and our solutions to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Art, and of course, Gerry. I'm now introducing the question and answer time, so we're now inviting questions from the floor. We'll devote about 10 minutes, if you don't mind. We have roving microphones that are available. There are 2 lovely ladies, Joanna and Rayan Velarde, that have these mics. So please raise. Can you show who you are so they know to get the mic from? Okay. And so in asking a question, we'd appreciate it if you please stand and identify yourself and your affiliation. So who's ready to with a question? Okay, Gerry. What do you think? When we leave this room, we should be doing, given that we now understand, what's really going on in this mudslinging fight between the NGOs and the mining industry. We have here suppliers as well. No, we're not just mining people. But what's the best thing we could do aside from just understanding what's going on?
And that is that if you come under attack and you haven't been doing the right things, you are in deep trouble. This is a fact. It's actually quite easy for us in Rio Tuba and Coral Bay to defend ourselves because we are world class. We've been doing it. We've been operating at a very high standard for many years. And you've seen what I've had to show. But if we don't follow those standards in the industry, year after year, there might be a few breaks. We will come under attack. There's no question. And if we don't do the right things, it's going to be very hard for us to defend ourselves. So we really have to maintain and adopt very high standards in the industry here to be able to survive these periodic attacks that will no doubt come. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I don't know how many times I've had to go through this. So, yeah.
Thanks, Leo. I was going to direct my question to Art, if you could help us with this. In recent times, I've been talking with shareholders and investors from places like New York and London and Hong Kong and many other places. And the one issue that they keep raising with me about investing in the Philippines is these incidents of provinces that have stood up and taken their own, the law into their own hands almost, and they're being really called rogue provinces. And it's the question is, how can this happen from Western investors? They can't seem to understand how provinces can just openly defy what most believe to be national law, and it is truly a perplexing thing for these Western investors. And I was wondering, Art, if you could give us a view from not just the Chamber, but from a Filipino view, as how we can calm those Western investors who desperately want to invest, particularly in mining in the Philippines. Now they have trouble doing so because of this, what appears to be defiance.
We have a study now, which I said will be in time be provided to interested mining companies. And you will see the reason for these anti-mining groups to be able to convince the provincial government to put up their own environmental code. This is a concerted effort. It's not just the provincial government of South Cotabato. It's everywhere who are being agitated by mining groups. There is a solution to that, of course. We'll never go into it frontally, but we can go through it in many other ways and get a resolution to the impasse. And this can be done by, having it resolved by the Supreme Court. But there are companies who will say, no, that will take too long. Some will say, we'll rather do it differently by going for a surer process, working with the provincial officials. And of course, getting the government to come out and resolve this, which is more important, national laws that will prevail over environmental codes. There are many ways how to handle it, but it takes time. So I'm sure that you have experienced it already, but having this EIA submitted already to the provincial board, which is what they want, and you can convince them regarding the safety of their watersheds and water sources, I'm sure that the thing will go away and you'll get your approval.
Just to supplement perhaps what has been said by Art, if you recall some years ago we had the Mineral Development Council. Those of you who are here today could do and support a move to revive it, because in my meetings with the foreign chambers, they have been very clear about their suggestion to try to have such a venue to dialogue between the investors, especially foreign investors, private sector, and government, because there's no point government doing its own thing and private sector demanding something if there is no venue or facility where they can dialogue and arrive at something. Otherwise, both groups will be going around in circles and there's no convergence point. So I would like to reiterate the revival of the Mineral Development Council.
Thank you, Ambassador. Under our laws, minerals belong to the state. Our Constitution says, first, the government of the state has the right to develop these minerals. Or, second, enter into contracts. Okay? And these are the MPSAs, these are the FTAAs. So, therefore, since the government enters into the contracts, it's basically an admission that while they have the minerals, they really don't have the capital or the technology to do it. So they ask a contractor to come in. So all miners are contractors of the government. Okay? They are not owners of the mines. The mines belong to the state. All mining projects belong to the state. The state, with its Mining Act, has invited the contractors to come in and undertake the mining for the state. We all know that ordinances that are passed by local governments cannot amend a national law. So the question is, when that happens, whose obligation is it to question the action of the local governments? The contractor or the owner of the mine, which is the state? And whose law, by the way, has been challenged by a local government law. So in my view, it's really the government that must take the action against the local governments to set those ordinances aside. The fact that the government has not lifted a finger to do it has allowed all of this to spread around the country. So I think it's all an issue of the political will of government, which often is blunted by politics, to actually go forward and do it. Yeah, and so really, it's like you're building a house. You as an owner of the property, and your contractor's being stopped by someone else. Is that the problem of the contractor? It's your property that's being interfered with, your property right to build a house. You should go after whoever is stopping you from doing it. So, it's for me, it's a very simple thing, but I think it's, as Art says, it's quite complicated. It's a culture, it's whatever it is. But I think the low-lying fruit that should be harvested is really the government stepping in, the national government stepping in and doing it. I've said my piece.